My daughter, when I finally came out to her, she's like, Mom, how did you not know? You played softball, you played golf, and you like power tools. I'm like, I don't know.
Welcome to Sleeping Around, where we offer a peek behind the curtain of modern sex and relationship therapy and research, bringing you insights and conversations otherwise reserved for the therapy room. I'm your host, Alayna Joy, a Master's of Counseling Psychology student, content creator, and lifelong sex and relationship nerd. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sleeping Around. Okay, I swear that after this episode, I am going to stop saying this every single episode, but I have to say it for this one because I seriously think this might be my favorite episode yet. Okay? And I know I have said that for the past handful of episodes straight, but I can't help it. I'm getting to speak with all of these incredible people, and I learn from these conversations alongside all of you. And the excitement that I feel at sharing them with all of you it feels like it's my favorite time every time, okay? Today's guest is Robin Douglas, an advocate and expert in coming out late. Robin has a podcast called Coming Out Late. They are a coming out late coach where they guide any and all late in life folks through the challenging journey that is coming out later in life. They facilitate coming out late retreats. They have a free Facebook group. If you are somebody who is in the process of exploring, realizing, recognizing, acknowledging your sexuality, and you in any way feel like you are a late bloomer, this is the episode for you. Robin Douglas is the person for you. We actually, for real, answer the question, how to know if you're gay, right? If you're questioning your sexuality, how to know, and then what to do next. These are the number one questions that I get and have gotten over the past 5 years, ever since my own re-coming out discovery journey, and we actually answer them in this episode. I am releasing this episode now because Pride Month is right around the corner. And so in honor of that, I bring you an episode that is near and dear to my heart, a conversation that had I heard 10, 20 years ago, it would have changed my entire life. And so I hope that any of you out there who are grappling with these questions, I hope that this episode is as helpful and comforting as it was for me. Enjoy. This topic is close to my heart. Coming out later in life.
Yes.
And when we say later in life, for me, what that means is anything beyond that kind of first puberty, adolescent, when your peers are recognizing their interests and their sexuality and their attractions, anything beyond that kind of first round feels like a quote unquote later in life for me. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
It's so hard to pin down. People have asked me that. And I think for me, it's somewhere maybe in the late 20s, maybe starting around 30. And I try not to pin a number down because I don't want to tell someone else what their identity is. If you're identifying as a late bloomer at 22, who am I to say, no, you can't be? You know, the threshold starts at 30. So it's pretty widespread.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because it's a question that I was getting when I was talking about recording this episode. And in thinking about it, I had a similar instinct to you. And then I was like, okay, well, late 20s is what quote unquote counts. And then I thought about it for another second and went, actually, if you feel like a late bloomer, then you're in the club. Could we start by you just telling us a bit of your story? How did we get here?
Oh my God.
Tell us about Robin Douglas.
It's a long and winding road because I'm old.
Not straight?
No, well, it was straight for a while. It was straight for a while, and then it became very winding. So I'm 63 years old, and I am a late bloomer, so this topic is near and dear to my heart as well. And I had my aha moment at the ripe young age of 54. So almost 10 years ago, I had no clue that I was gay. And it wasn't because the universe wasn't trying to tell me. The poor universe was giving me breadcrumbs and breadcrumbs for 8 to 10 years until finally the universe was like, what is wrong with this person? And took a big loaf of bread and just knocked me upside of the head and said, you're gay. You're gay. It was literally my birthday weekend, May of 2015. And I was walking through my garage and all of a sudden I stopped. What?
Mine was my birthday weekend.
Wow.
Mine was my aha moment was my birthday weekend, my 28th birthday weekend.
I think there's something to that. I really do. I think there's something to that.
I'm already getting goosebumps. Like, this conversation is going to be like, okay.
I know. It's crazy. So it was my birthday weekend and I was walking through the garage and all of a sudden I just stopped in my tracks and I gasped. I went, holy shit, I'm gay. Like out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then after I gasped, I just giggled. I laughed a little bit. It was like, oh my God, And at that point in time, I was almost 30 years married, 28 years married to a man. I have 2 daughters. They were probably somewhere in their college journey. I was like, well, now what? Now what? That was in May. By September, I was starting the divorce process, mostly because it wasn't a great relationship. It was not a great marriage towards the end. The last 14 years were loveless and sexless, and it was, not great. So yeah, I ended up initiating divorce. It was not a smooth ride. It was very contentious. It took almost 3 years to get divorced. But here I am. Now I'm living my best little gay life, and it was really worth it. It was not easy on everybody. It was not easy on me. It's definitely been worth it.
And that is, like, we're jumping right into the heart of it. That is the question that I get over and over and over again. It's the question that I saw when posting about this episode and asking what people want to know. There's like 2 pieces. It's one, how do I know? And so I would love to hear more about your breadcrumbs and bread loaf.
Yes.
And then it's, I'm already in this long-term relationship, or I have kids. Is it too late? Like, it's kind of, the pieces are, how do I know? And then once I know, what do I do? How do I move forward?
Yeah.
So maybe let's start with the how did you know?
The breadcrumbs that I didn't understand and was ignoring for 8 to 10 years were, I started to notice women. And I didn't notice women before. I never had, that I could recall, female crushes or didn't have any experiences in college. And I just started little by little noticing women more and would just move about my business. Life is on a conveyor belt and a very fast one. And I just shrugged it off and moved on until the signs were just really difficult to ignore. I ended up developing a crush on my physical therapist, and it was intense. And I still didn't get it. I was like, oh, it's okay that I'm, only signing up for PT for her and, that I'm staying longer. And, it was crazy. It was really intense. So I had a few of those experiences.
So the crush on the PT and kind of having some, where you said that experience was really intense. So
for me, it wasn't for her.
Yeah. But can you put into words what differentiated the feelings toward this woman versus feelings you'd had in the past?
Sure. And I hear this a lot. What I'm about to say is I wanted everything to do with her. I wanted to be in her space. I wanted to get to know everything about her. I wanted to know where she lived. What kind of car did she drive? I just could not get enough of her. If I was off in this big physical therapy room, open room, doing my own exercises, I would be always following and seeing where she was and what she was doing, who she was talking to. I was obsessed. I mean, it's an obsession. That's what differentiates it. It was pretty obvious.
And that was new. That was new and different.
Yeah. Oh, very new. I mean, it was like I was in high school again, and I had seen this boy that I just was like, I'd want to know where his locker was. I'd want to know how many brothers he has and where does he live. And so it was, I had not experienced that in a really, really long time.
And so that was a crumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a bigger crumb, and I still managed. I was a bigger crumb.
It's like a bite-sized crumb.
Yeah, that was a pretty good sized crumb, and I still managed to sweep it aside off my placemat and said, "Oh, I don't know what that crumb is doing there." Yeah, I just had more and more of those intense experiences. There was a time close to the end where I was in Staples getting who knows what, and the retailer, and I was following a woman up and down the aisles. Like, I was just like, wow, she's good looking, and I didn't know why, but I was following her up and down the aisles. And then I finally left and sat in my car, and she came out and then went over to the grocery store. So I was like, I could probably pick up a few things in the grocery store.
Maybe some bread.
Oh my God. And maybe some bread. Loaves of bread to bonk myself in the head. I was like, wow, that was weird. And still went about my business. It's crazy.
It's amazing how we can justify and like rationale away these experiences where it's like, oh, she was just incredibly beautiful. So anybody would look at her and think she was incredibly beautiful. Like, anybody would want to look at her more. That's
a lot of rationalizing.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was just finally an accumulation of all these breadcrumbs and getting to not a great point in my marriage. And it was a breaking point, and there I was, at our vacation lake house all by myself over my birthday weekend. And it just came out of left field. I didn't, I'm trying to think if before that. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is a great story. So that was May. A few months before that, in March, I decided to embark on my own research. Not asking, am I gay? I never even asked myself that question. I just said, you know what? I'm going to go get myself a little gift card from the supermarket. So, this was really shifty and conniving, but I'm going to go get myself a gift card and then go back over to Staples and buy myself a burner phone. And then I'm going to buy some time on it, and I'm going to go log into some dating apps. And I can't believe I did that. I don't even know where that, my friends always tell me I would make a horrible crook, because I'm just not that slippery. But, and I did do just that. And I joined a dating app, and still, and it felt a little weird when it asked me, are you a woman seeking a man, or are you a woman seeking a woman? And I was like, well, that's weird, but I'm going to click that dot. And what I learned from that research was that the first 10 women I met and were chatting with, 8 or 9 out of the 10 were all women that had been married to men and came out later in life. And I was like, oh my God. So it still took me 3 months for the delay to hit me and say, oh my God, I'm gay. So yeah, it's been a really weird journey. Very weird.
And that's part of it is, from the outside looking in, it's confusing to people to go, well, how did you not know? This doesn't fit within my conceptualization of what it means to be gay or how it feels to be gay. And so it's confusing and strange.
Yep.
And we're sitting here on the inside going, yeah, I feel confused and strange. It is strange.
Yes.
It's hard to explain how you could not know something that feels so integral.
Yes.
And yet we didn't.
Nope.
I had no idea.
You either? Yeah, I had
Not
no
a clue.
idea. Well, I think you were
Not a clue.
Weren't you a step closer? Didn't you identify as bi?
Yes.
All right. So
yes, I was a step closer.
That was about it.
But before we get to the rest of the episode, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this week's content, Dossier. Dossier is on a mission to make luxury fragrances accessible. After learning about the incredibly high markup in the luxury designer perfume industry, Dossier decided it was time to make their own line of perfumes. Perfumes that are impressions, very, very good impressions of these luxury designer fragrances. They make dupes at an affordable price. Each scent is crafted with high-quality ingredients, sourced from Grasse, France, which is the perfume capital of the world, and they work with renowned expert perfumers to create each scent. These are top-of-the-line industry folks who have worked with some of the most recognizable name brands out there, and they work with Dossier to create these dupes, these impressions. So you can get not just the scent of these luxury brands, but the quality for a fraction of the price. And not to mention that Dossier is cruelty-free, which, like, none of the designer brands are. For example, this scent, Spicy Orchid, is an impression of Tom Ford's Black Orchid. And you all know that I like to give it a sniff and tell you what kind of gay I think would wear it. Oh, this is like, she's in a boardroom. She's going corporate. She's powerful. She's in charge. But she's also clean and sultry. This is Powdery Coconut. This is a dupe for Tom Ford's Soleil Blanc, which retails for like $400. $400. This is not even $60. And you can save 20% off when you sign up. You can bundle scents together and save. And Dossier has a great return policy if you get it and try it and don't like it. Ooh, I like this one. This is like that baby powder, but not like a baby. Like this says, I'm gay married. I'm gay married and maybe I gay have a baby and have my whole life together while being gay. Last but not least, Woody Chestnut. This is like maybe that gay in the club that comes on a little too strong. Sorry. If you want to check out Dossier for yourself, the link is in my description and in the show notes. If you are looking to find your signature scent and do some exploring of different scents that are out there, Dossier is the way to do it. It's affordable, it's high quality, and so you can try a bundle to find the ones that work for you. Now back to the episode. What stuck out to me about what you just said is you said you weren't looking up, am I gay? You said that question you never even asked yourself. That's the same thing for me, is I never questioned my attraction to men. Any feelings I had towards women, any feelings I had towards queer people, I picked those apart, analyzed them, thought about them, tried to figure them out, questioned them, like in every way you can imagine. But this attraction to men and desire to be with men was just, it was the default. It was a given. So I never even questioned it. And for me, the aha, or more, for me, it was more like an was when I started to question that attraction and it all fell apart.
I actually remember I've been a little fan of yours for the last 4.5 years. And I think my first introduction to you was 4.5 years ago with your video and telling your story. And it was just, whoa. And I followed you for a while and then I kind of lost touch and here we are. But
and here we are.
I was going to use the same word, default. I mean, we absolutely, just like there's a default that there's binary, right? And just like the default of monogamy, that's a default. You know, there's something wrong with you if you're not monogamous. There's something wrong with you if you're not male or female. And it's the same thing. When I grew up, and I was born in 1961, so I'm old, and I had no representation around me. You know, like there was a guy that talked and acted kind of feminine. There just wasn't any representation. And my parents were not the type that spoke about gay people, or like I was not outwardly told that gay people are bad. However, society somehow educated me subliminally to know that it was a no-no. When I got to high school, I played sports. I'm like your typical woman, golf, softball. You know, my daughter, when I finally came out to her, she's like, Mom, how did you not know? You played softball, you played golf, and you like power tools. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I didn't know.
Didn't occur to me.
I know. I was a senior in high school and deciding what college to go to, and somebody whispered into my ear, you know, if you play sports in college, they're all gay. And I was like, I don't want to catch that. You know, and I denied myself the joy of playing sports in college because I was afraid of turning gay or being exposed to gay women and whatever. And it's such a shame. So on some level, there was social conditioning going on there.
The fact that you remember that,
That's a good point.
you know, like I have my own memories that are so innocuous. It's such a passing moment, and yet it locked itself away somewhere in my mind. Like I remember, for me, the one is that magazine that came out where Ellen announced that she was gay.
Was it on Curve magazine, maybe?
I don't remember the magazine, but I remember where I was when I saw the cover. I remember I remember everything. I'm getting goosebumps again.
Oh.
I remember everything about that moment, and then just boop, went on with my life. Like never thought about it again, but something about that like locked itself into my mind, because I grew up in a pretty conservative small town. I didn't know a lot about gay people. I didn't even know women could be gay, you know, and then I saw, this Ellen thing, I think was
There's a lot of people's indoctrination too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so what we're kind of describing here in a roundabout way is the idea of compulsive heterosexuality.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I didn't know anything about it until I came out, and not even in the first few years of me being out. It really, since I've been doing this work for the past 4.5 years, is when I became aware of compulsory heterosexuality, and I was stunned. I still am stunned. Diving into, we call it comp het, short for compulsory heterosexuality. What it means to me is that my lens is so narrow that I'm only looking at things through a heterosexual lens, and that's all there is. And everything in my life, when I was born, they deemed me a girl. They tried to give me dresses and Barbie dolls, and I wanted the Matchbox cars and the shorts and the sneakers. But, there is such an icky roadmap that you're immediately put on, and expectations of you. You're going to go to college, you're going to meet a guy, you're going to get married, have children, and have the dog and the picket fence, and you should be happy. And so many people, I mean, myself included, I had a very nice life with my ex-husband and my kids, and something was still missing. I was not happy. So yeah, comp het is just insidious in our culture, and it's through comp het that I then dove into, well, what else is society putting upon us, that we are expected to swallow and go about our business. And, then I come across patriarchy and misogyny, and it's pretty frightening.
You kind of see one piece of it and then everything else blows wide open. Yeah, with compulsory heterosexuality, it's this default that we're talking about, that, like you said, when you are born, you are given a gender, and then that gender comes with the path that you're supposed to walk and the role that you're supposed to fill. Maybe that's the answer to the question, how did you not know? Well, how did I not know? Comp het. That's probably the answer.
Exactly. I think that's really true for a large population of people coming out late. And in my particular situation too, I had a little twist in the story, in that when I was 8 or 9 years old, my mom put me in tennis lessons just through the recreation department or whatever. And only since coming out and looking back, I realized I had a wicked crush on my tennis teacher, like at 8 and 9 years old. Like I wanted everything to do with her. I wanted to pick up all the tennis balls. I wanted to be the teacher's pet. I still remember who she is. That should tell you something. And then a year and a half later, my mom dies, and I didn't know she was sick and whatever. So I'm 10 years old. My mom dies. I think I was kind of sleepwalking through life. I think at that point I had experienced trauma. I wasn't questioning anything. I was really sleepwalking through life, just getting by as a young kid. So I think I buried whatever those feelings were, at 8 or 9 years old. It was very easy for me to adopt these compulsory heterosexual expectations, because I was out of it. But most of us are out of it. Most of us are sleepwalking through life. We're not questioning things. And that's something that I'm so incredibly grateful that my coming out has provided me, is I do feel awoke, and I am questioning things around me. And I love that.
How does somebody start? Like if somebody is wanting to discover whether compulsory heterosexuality is playing a role in their life, or is looking to explore their queerness, is questioning their sexuality, where does somebody start? What are some first steps?
First of all, people always say, well, how do I know if I'm gay? How do I really know? Like, a lot of women think that they have to have an intimate or sexual experience with other women to determine that. I don't believe that to be true. I think they're telling themselves that as either a barrier or to give themselves that enlightenment. I did not have an experience with a woman. I just, it was all those breadcrumbs. It was like, how could I not? So I think people have to get really quiet and really honest with themselves and think about the things that they just blindly followed. They have to I think women need to think about, what is it that I want in my life? Am I happy? Did I choose this, or did it choose me?
Yes.
Look around and just say, is this what I want? Is this what I really want? And it's frightening. It's not an easy journey to take. Some people like to journal. Some people like to just get quiet on either walks or meditation. There are ways to go within, and it's really about self-discovery. Am I living the life that I thought I'd be living? Or is this the life that everybody expected me to be living?
When I did kind of realize what I thought was bisexuality at the time, and I was in a relationship with a man, whenever I would have, it was like jealous feelings, yearning feelings, longing feelings for a relationship with a woman. So let's say I would see two women who were in a relationship online, because I didn't really know queer people around me. So often it was like through the internet that I would have kind of queer community. And so I would see queer relationships and I would have this pull and this thought of like, I wish that was me. But then the thought that would immediately follow was, but you made your choice. It was like, that was my way of quieting myself.
Yes.
But you made your choice.
Yep.
But you made your choice. And so the different questions you just laid out, one being, did I choose this? But then also, do I want this? Am I happy? Is this the life that I want? If I had my perfect life, my ideal world, is this it?
And it may have been. It may have been at one time, but things change. People change. Situations changes. We wake up more. We get enlightened. We get educated, informed.
Well, and that's the piece that would have been so powerful for me, is that, yes, I did choose this. Yes, at that point, those were my choices. And you can make a different choice. Like, it's not too late to recognize, oh, I made the choice that actually isn't right for me. And then make a new one.
Exactly.
In the most simplified way that we could possibly.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk more about kind of the what comes after, but
it's funny because my tagline in my podcast is it's better late than never, because it's never too late. And I really
that's so good.
I know, and I really, really believe that. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're gay or straight. It's never too late to make a change or to do something different. And it's one thing, when we realize, wow, I've been influenced by this thing called compulsory heterosexuality, and examine that more. Be curious, be brave to be curious about what that means. And the other thing that you mentioned that I really want to address is that you had some little whispers, right? You was like, wow, I'm jealous of that queer couple. That's the benefit of getting quiet, is allowing, our society is so loud and so in our faces, and there's so much information coming at us that we only hear the loud stuff. But when we allow ourselves to get quiet and really listen to our intuition and our bodies and give that little thought more time and sit with it, it'll tell us the truth. And of course, if we're ready to hear the truth, great. And if we're not, we will very easily find ways to push that aside and get scared and scurry off. But yeah.
Getting quiet and sitting with or allowing, you can expand that to really any emotional experience. What a skill to practice, to be able to sit in the discomfort. And part of that, because I'm still practicing this, like in so many areas of my life. Just instead of experiencing some sort of difficult emotion, my instinct is to like jump into action, even if that action is a reaction rather than a response. And practicing the slowing down and just like allowing for a little while, it's kind of amazing what can shift and what comes up. And
Absolutely. There's a lot of magic.
It goes back to what you were saying about bravery.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said and a lot of power to be taken back when we pause. The power of the pause is so important. And I don't do this well. This is something I'll be practicing the rest of my life, and waking up a little bit more and exploring, being curious and overcoming the fear, of whatever it is that I might be fearing.
That's one piece around the self-discovery and how do I know? So then we have the aha or the uh-oh or the oh shit moment. What happens next? And I want the listener at home to know that this is not us saying this is what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really powerful to hear what we did do,
Mm-hmm.
Our own experiences and our own stories. A lot of the responses that I get, because I can speak to the late 20s, early 30s experience, but I share my experience and I get a lot of folks saying, okay, well, I'm 50, I'm 60. What you're sharing doesn't I have kids, I am married.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd really like to hear more about your experience.
Once you have this uh-oh, holy shit, aha moment, my suggestion again is to sit with that privately with yourself. Don't be too quick to scream out the windows or run in a panic to somebody. Just sit with it for a couple of days, or a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then get your booty into therapy. Get your booty into therapy, and preferably a queer therapist. You need to talk this out with someone on a regular basis, weekly. Go talk to somebody about this. And if they're trying to tell you, I've heard horror stories about therapists that are not queer that are saying, well, it's just a phase, or you should go home and be a good wife, or whatever.
Still?
Yeah. But I'm hearing those less and less. And I think more and more women are seeking out queer therapists. So, if you're not in a relationship or a marriage, I still would give you the same advice, is to sit with this information and then get your booty into therapy. And if you are in a marriage and or a relationship, I still say, sit with this privately for a minute and let it sink in. Let it, absorb it a little bit into your cells and see what this means for you, and also get into therapy so that you can talk about it out with somebody. And then at some point you'll share it with a significant other or your family or somebody. But that's the first thing I would do, is to just sit with it and absorb it. Maybe flashbacks will start coming to you saying, oh my God, that's why I followed that person around the Staples, or I actually asked my orthopedic doctor to give me 3 more extra weeks of PT so that I could go back to physical therapy. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, you don't want it to be secret, but it is very private. And I think it's important to learn to process. There's a difference between, you're not keeping secrets, but it's private information that you might need to talk about it with a therapist first, so that you can process it, so that you can come from a solid foundation to then express it to a loved one, so that you're not both processing it at the same time.
Yes, right. That differentiation feels important. Secret versus private.
Mm-hmm.
You're not keeping secrets. You're not holding on to something shameful. What you're doing is sitting with something, an experience that is private and personal to you,
mm-hmm. and
you're allowing some space.
Yes.
I like that the through line here so far has been slow down.
Yes, something I did not do.
Me neither.
I
tried.
I know. Didn't work.
No.
But I'm able to now say, don't do what I did. Space
mm-hmm.
and slowing down is so imperative. It's excruciating for many women, because either you're dying to get out of your marriage and get out there, or you're dying to get through whatever this is. And you can't rush this stuff.
You're kind of leading into the next thought of this feeling of lost time, a feeling of maybe grief around the what if I would have known sooner, and how could my life have been different, and a feeling of I need to get started on my next chapter now because I'm running out of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to that, I respond in a few ways. Imagine, you're in your car and you're looking at your windshield, and your windshield is enormous. It gives you plenty of viewing capacity to move forward and to, drive without crashing. And then you look at your little rear view mirror and it's tiny. You can't see a whole lot. And I couldn't imagine having to drive on freeways and whatever, just only looking through that little mirror in the past. So, yes, it's upsetting. There's going to be grief. I don't want to ever, sweep grief under a carpet. It's more important to look forward than to look backwards. With me saying that, I also believe that through recovery, because I'm also in 12-step recovery, that we have an expression that says we do not regret the past, nor do we wish to shut the door on it. So I got here the way I got here. That saying, not regretting the past and not wishing to shut the door on it is about the process of forgiveness and acceptance. The process of grief is me forgiving, that like, wow, it took me this long to figure this out. And then acceptance of like, okay, I'm here. Like, I personally have not felt regret that I didn't come out sooner. I actually feel like, oh, thank God I figured it out at least at 54 and I'm not dead yet, But a lot of people do. A lot of people do feel regret and grief, and you should definitely grieve. But don't get stuck in grief. Don't dwell in grief. That's not a healthy place. Try to go through the process. I believe our lives are unfolding exactly as they are meant to unfold. I also believe that people need to embrace impermanence, that nothing stays the same, and that, nothing lasts forever and everything changes. So we as a human species have never really been taught that when we're young, that change is inevitable and to get comfortable and be okay with change. So it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack when we come out late. It's a lot.
The piece of like acceptance of the road that you've taken to get where you are, because it is what it is. It is what it is. There's no changing it. So there's the radical acceptance piece, and you said the word forgiveness, which, like being able to look back and forgive your past self for whatever choices they were making, because they were doing the best that they could.
Absolutely.
They were doing the best they could with the information that they had. They survived as best as they could, and now you're here, right? And so, yes, grief, yes, feeling that and honoring that and processing that, and also now there's, the world is your oyster.
It really is.
Like now comes the part where you get to make new choices and experience new things, and this whole new world is open to you.
But people get stuck too. They get stuck. And I think that was, something that, you had mentioned to me earlier about, why people stay there. How do they move forward with this information?
How do we move forward?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that comes up is, I think you had asked me once about common threads. What are some common threads that I'm seeing in the population of women coming out later in life? And I say women because that's who I mostly work with, but I have a lot of men that listen to my podcast too, so I don't mean to exclude anyone. The common thread, besides compulsory heterosexuality, there's religious trauma and there's social conditioning. But the other thing that is fear and uncertainty. And that will stop us in our tracks, because it's the fear of the unknown. We're in this, maybe we're in a relationship or a marriage, or maybe we're not, but wherever we are in life, we're safe. It's temporarily stable. It's comfortable. It's familiar. And oh my God, if I did anything different, it would completely blow that out of the water. And so that's the really biggest challenge for anybody coming out, is overcoming that fear and uncertainty.
Oof. Yep. Yep.
And I want to say a quote from a very wise woman I heard, who her name is Alayna Joy. I was listening to, they were brilliant, your videos that you do once a year when you look back at the year before and the year before. So I was watching that, and this goes along with uncertainty and fear. And you said, I would rather live an uncertain life as a gay woman than a life of certainty in hiding. And now I get to choose that uncertainty. Though things that I always wanted might be in the cards and might not be in the cards for me. Yes, I had to go through that period of fear to get here. I had to go through it. And now I'm again moving toward the life that I want. It's cyclical. It's really vulnerable and scary to be in love. It's really scary. You almost have to accept and embrace the fact that in the act of loving, you are opening yourself up to potential hurt. The instinct is to grasp and hold tightly to any sort of uncertainty or certainty, or to get a guarantee that life is going to be this way forever, or nothing is going to change. And that is just not true. We need to learn to be with uncertainty because, I mean,
you're pulling a quote.
I know, right? I was dying to share that with you.
Yeah, and I was, as you were speaking about the fear and the uncertainty, though I was almost trying to think of a way to articulate what past me apparently has articulated in a cohesive way, because that's exactly how I feel.
I mean, that opening statement is brilliant. I would rather live an uncertain life as a gay woman than a life of certainty in hiding. And then your ending, the instinct is to grasp and hold tightly to any sort of certainty, or to get a guarantee that life is going to be this way forever, and never going to change. It's an illusion. Certainty, any kind of certain, assurance and all those things. It's an illusion in life. There is no such thing as certainty, and certainly that things are going to stay the same forever.
It's like all you can do is choose the best thing you can choose in each moment, in each day.
Yes.
And I think that for me, that was my turning point, was that recognition that I knew deep down that I would rather live that life of uncertainty. I would rather face those question marks than stay on the path that I was on, even though it felt guaranteed.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is so hard. And that's my life's work, is to move people from that frozen fear and like, I can't change my life. I don't know what's ahead, to help walk them across that bridge and realize it's going to be okay. Well, I mean, it's not going to be an easy bridge. There's going to be some wood that falls off the bridge, and your leg's going to go through, and friends going to have to pull you out. It's not going to be an easy walk across the bridge, but it is so worth it.
I want to pull on your expertise here for folks who are listening and they're saying, yes, that's me. I am sitting in that fear. I feel deep down I cannot change this. I'm too scared. How do you work with those folks? What do you say?
The point of change comes when you can no longer stay the same. When you can't stand the pain of staying the same anymore, that's when you'll change. And everybody's threshold is different. I run a lot of support groups every week and see hundreds of women, and I don't try to push anybody into a certain direction. We're all on our own journey in our own time, and we have our own threshold. But I'll tell you, the people that finally make changes, it's because they can no longer stay in the pain that they're currently in. And that's individual for everybody.
The piece around everybody being on their own journey and their own timeline is also really important. I also saw some comments and some questions where folks were saying, I don't think I'm ever going to come out. Is that okay?
Of course.
Am I right? Of course. And everything that we're saying here today is not to say, oh, you think that you're gay? Well, you are. So leave your relationship and be gay.
Right.
It's more about checking in with yourself and looking at where your life is at and the relationships that you have, and how do you actually feel in that place in your life. And if there is a desire to make a change, then that's the place that we're speaking from.
Exactly. And be honest. I mean, the key is to be honest with ourselves. We are so good at telling ourselves what we think we want to hear just to stay safe and secure. But just be honest. And maybe in this moment, I'm okay. I'm okay right now. I'm gay, but I'm going to stay in the marriage. And I'm okay with that.
And that can be okay.
Absolutely.
There's no right or wrong way for those who are making the change, who are saying, I've realized that I'm gay and I am 30, 40, 50, 60. And now I'm looking to enter the dating world. And I've never had a queer experience. I've never had a queer relationship.
What do we say there?
What do we say there?
Well, a couple of things. If you're not in a relationship with anyone, then, you have a lot of choices. But if you are in a committed relationship, whether you're married or not married, then that's when you need to come to an agreement with your partner that you would like to explore this side of you. And you need to get consent. It's got to be okay with both partners. So that would be the first step that I would do. And your therapist would help you through that process, because now you're moving out of the private zone and wanting to share this. And it's so funny. It's these paths, these journeys splinter in 20 directions. Like, assuming your partner, your husband says, yeah, all right, I'm cool with that. You can explore. Then we go to the next step. And then there's partners who say, no, I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with that. And then you've got to, reevaluate and whatever, do the next steps on that path. But for the people who do want to date, you're not going to like my answer, because I didn't do this, and I highly recommend it, is to go slowly. Slowly.
Yeah.
If you're not in a queer community, my advice is to make some friends.
Friends. Yes.
Not friends with benefits.
No. Friends.
So my first step is to find at least one good friend, because you can't, you'll go broke going to therapy. You need at least one other person you can talk to and confide in, and to go do things with. There's nothing better than to have a wing woman who you can go to events with and not feel scared or alone or whatever. I also want to say too, if you're coming out of a relationship, you need to let that breathe. You need to recover and grieve and give space between the relationship you're leaving and, one that you want to start. The other thing, it's not very popular, but I would not recommend dating apps. I did use dating apps when 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and somewhat successfully. But it's scary out there now. I mean, there are so many trolls and scammers and people, pretending to be who they're not. Hopefully you'll meet people in real life, in person. And those connections, and when you meet those people, it's so much, I don't know, to me, it's richer. Yes, I've met a lot of great people online. Other people have had success with dating apps. I'm not saying don't use them. I just think going organically is, if you can, is a great way to do that. And when you're putting yourself in these social surroundings, you get to see somebody without that weird pressure of like, are we dating? Are we not dating? But you get to see people in their real colors, and this happened to me. I was sitting around a campfire once and somebody looked pretty attractive to me. And then after going to a few of these meetups, I realized, oh my gosh, I really dodged a bullet there. I took the time to kind of get to know that person without ever. Yeah. It's so strange. We jump into relationships before we become friends.
The friends piece, I've had conversations on this show in so many different ways around dating and how to start dating and, exploring different arenas in the dating world. The concept of slowing down, we've heard that, right? Okay, slow down, right? Everyone tells us, slow down. Like, am I going to do that? Probably not, but I get it. Yeah, slow down. The piece around finding your friends first, finding your community first, that feels, at least to me, that feels new, or like it feels important.
It's really important. And some people who are listening might say, like, I live in a dinky little red state, dinky town in a red state, and where am I going to find a friend? Through the weekly support groups that I do in Zoom, we have matched up so many people as friends, and they now have, people to do things with, which is just incredible. And if you can go on a retreat, I now do retreats for people for this community. If you can go in person on a retreat, these are retreats that are just for people coming out late. So, and it's so safe, we do things that you never would have done on your own, as just coming out. So
all of this stuff will be linked in the description and the show notes for anybody who's interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
It is huge. And not what I did, but do as I say, not as I did.
Yeah, but sounds like a really good idea.
It is a really good idea.
So the other piece of dating or being new to the queer community and kind of being new to this piece of yourself is intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never had an experience with a woman or a queer person, like a sexual experience, that's scary.
It is scary.
You know, and intimidating and
Mhm.
nerve-wracking and exciting and overwhelming. How does somebody step into that new arena?
Gosh, there are so many things you can do to prepare yourself. And you can step into it completely unprepared, but be honest and open. You know, if you're at a point where you're ready to share your body with another human being, I would hope that you would feel comfortable enough to say, I've never done this before. That's my first piece of advice, you know, is to be honest with the person that you're talking to and ask to go slowly. To me, that's important. Also, I think it's important to get to know what you like sexually, you know, get to know your body. And many of us, myself included, I hadn't had sex in 14, 15 years before I came out. And so many women out there, it's so sad. They think that they're broken. And I have to tell you, I just came out of one of my support groups today, and there was a woman who had her first experience this past weekend. And she said, I wish I knew then what I know now. I mean, it's mind blowing. If you truly, it's mind blowing. If you are truly gay, and it's still mind blowing, not just even the first, it is.
No.
This poor woman is like, I didn't know I had desire like that. I didn't know I could feel that way, you know, and so it's freaking amazing. And I understand if you're scared, it's scary to do anything for the first time, but particularly being intimate. But get to know what you like about your body. Be brave enough to either slow things down or guide the other person. If something's not comfortable, please stop them. Just say, you know, not yet, not yet. You know, I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying not yet. You know, we have to be so freaking courageous on this journey that, like, we have to even speak up for ourselves and say what we need and want. I'm not going to say it's not scary, but it is mind blowing, and you know, just go slowly if you need to go slowly.
Well, and what you said about it's just like doing anything for the first time, that makes me want to prompt just thinking about other things that you've done for the first time. How did you manage that? How did you handle that experience? What was that like for you? And maybe some of that can be translated.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And also, too, being a therapist in training, you've probably heard the outcome in our head is way more scary than the reality of what actually happens. Like, we build this up to be this unbelievably scary thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I am shy. I have a hard time taking the initiative, you know, sexually, at least early on in relationships. And I just lay it out there, you know, like I just say how I'm feeling. You know, I'm feeling, I'm a little awkward, you know, and whatever. And, you know, it's okay to laugh. You know, it's okay to laugh during these times. I encourage it.
Don't you want that in a partner? Like, don't you want a partner to be having these experiences with that you can say what you're actually experiencing? Or, like, if I'm thinking about somebody else, right? If I'm thinking about having a partner and that person comes to me and they say, I've never done this before, or they have done it before, but they're feeling nervous. Or can we go slowly? Even if we've had sex 100 times and they say, can we go slowly today? I'm feeling sensitive, whatever it is. Yes, that feels so immediately connective because the honesty and the
vulnerability, you know, to say that.
The vulnerability. And I also think if you are going to say that, if you're going to say something true about the way that you're feeling to a person that you want to have a sexual experience with, and they're going to react poorly to that, that's not going to be a good experience anyway.
No, that's not your person.
Right?
Yeah.
No, it's not the person. And so I get that it's really scary, but trying to remember those two pieces, like, it can be light. Sharing the way that you're feeling, if it's nerves, if it's this is my first time, whatever, that can be a light thing. It can be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be this kind of mood killer, intense, pressure builder conversation, right? There are ways to kind of integrate.
Definitely. And you don't have to sit in silence about it. Don't try to pretend that you know what you're doing or pretend that you're okay. That's so hard. That's so hard to manage and navigate through this.
Something you said about how we, as human beings, when we think about something that we're nervous about, we build it up in our heads to be this big, scary thing, this big, scary outcome. Something that I like to think about, or something that I've learned, is we often think about the worst case scenario, right? We get nervous. We paint the picture of the worst case scenario. This is the worst thing that could happen. I'm trying to prepare myself for it. Okay. If you're going to give the worst case scenario airtime, what about the best case scenario?
Absolutely.
Like, what if the best thing happens? What would that look like?
Exactly.
Like, at least give both airtime.
Absolutely.
Because often we don't even imagine the best case scenario because we're so focused on the scary one.
Yeah. And, I heard something recently about every cell in our body is eavesdropping on our mind and our thoughts.
Ooh,
yeah. So we really need to be mindful of what we're thinking. I mean, set yourself up for success, and don't dwell on, like you said, the scary or the worst case scenario, because it very well may come true because every cell in your body is expecting the worst.
Yeah. In your work with late bloomers, in your extensive experience with folks who are coming out later in life, is there one thing that you wish everybody knew?
I think one thing is Mary Oliver said, we only get this one precious life. What are we going to do with this one precious life? My long answer is you're not alone. You're okay. You've not done anything wrong. And you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
That's going to make me cry.
Oh, well, I tell you, there's a lot of shame and guilt out there, and we need to eradicate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your time. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
The best place to find me, because I don't have a website yet, I really need a website. The best place to find me is probably on Instagram, and that's at late.blooming.lesbian. Or people can email me at comingoutlater@gmail.com.
Another thank you to Dossier for partnering with me on this episode. Remember, you can go to the link in my description. It's also linked in the show notes to check out some Dossier scents for yourself. Is there a luxury designer scent you've always wanted to try? Try it with Dossier first. They smell the same, the quality is the same, for a fraction of the price. Thank you, Dossier. Thanks for listening. You can also access all of our extended cut episodes with bonus content from every single guest over on Patreon at patreon.com/AlaynaJoy. That's patreon.com/ALAYNAJoy. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at sleepingaroundpod for updates, teasers, episode discussions, and more. This episode was produced by Alayna Joy and Danae Fender and edited by Corey Mosquita. See you next time, back here on the couch.